evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Sound of Sosa. On tonight's episode, I have Witlee Ethan, who is a multifaceted professional serving as a certified life and relationship coach, inspirational speaker, victim advocate for legislative reform, contributing author, and the host of Live Each Day with Purpose podcast, a survivor of domestic and sexual violence. She has transformed her experience into advocacy, working to protect the rights of victims through legislative efforts. Witlee shares her story and insight through various media and publications, inspiring others to overcome adversity and live purposefully. As reflected in Genesis 50:20, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Witlee's journey exemplifies resilience and faith. And throughout this discussion with her, I hope you can see how no matter how dark the times are, no matter how much it doesn't seem like you'll ever see the light again, all you have to do is turn to God. And with Him in your corner, there's nothing that cannot be accomplished. I hope throughout this conversation, you find inspiration, you find a blessed story, you find a heartfelt moment, because to speak to the least of it, that is what I felt. I hope everyone enjoys. Stay tuned. This actually is the longest podcast I've done to date. I think we clocked about 6 hours of recording time. So this will be a long series, this one. So I hope everyone enjoys, and take care. And thank you for joining us for another episode of The Sound of Sosa. Enjoy, everybody. And what I've seen is during COVID, a lot of people, it changed people a lot, and it tore me through a pretty bad place. But after all of it, I mean, it seems like it does still feel heavy to me. Like I still don't. It's almost like I don't even understand how I even was thinking I was the same person, and like I'm not even the same person as I was before COVID. Even now, I feel so much better. My situation's a whole lot worse. Like not worse, but like I'm not as I don't have as much money. Things cost more now, and so it's almost like a double whammy. But my care and like my worrisomeness is almost completely gone, and so with that, it's like I can't even be upset about it. And so it's unfortunately where I was working at, where I met Renee at Midway Airport. I left my cash bag on the cash machine, and I lost my job for it. And I started doing construction, and so I've just been doing that. And I'm, as soon as they told me it, I'm like, you know what, God has me. If this is not where He wants me to be, then He's taking me away from there. And so,
when did you meet Renee?
I met Renee like almost 3 years ago now. At Midway Airport, I used to bartend there. And we just got to talking.
It made it seem like you guys recently met.
Yeah, I mean,
while she's traveling.
It was pretty recent. I mean, I interviewed her almost. It's been a little bit now. It's been like 8 months now since I talked to her. I think originally, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it was 8 months. Like, because like when I talked to her, it's like a very fast catch up. Very busy, and so there's not a lot of time to like be like, oh, what's going on in your life, and what's going on in your life, and so she's like, oh, this guy, and I met him at the airport. I need to connect you to, and so I'm thinking it's like current, present. You just were at the airport. You just met him.
No, yeah, so we didn't I didn't reach out right away. We had met under different circumstances because I hadn't even been doing my podcast at that point when I had actually met her. My whole life aim changed in like 2022, and then in 2023 I think I had it solidly figured out what I wanted, and it was to acquire some land in Tennessee, build a church, then a daycare, a K through 8, and then a high school. The K through 8 in high school would be about 20 years after the daycare and church, but those two would be the foundation of the surrounding. And like I wouldn't I you know I obviously am a Christian, and I wholeheartedly believe in my religion. I believe that Jesus Christ died for us on the cross. There's nothing that could really shake me from that anymore. But I wouldn't make the school um any type. I would have, you could get religious teachings in there, yes, if you wanted it, but I wouldn't force it into there. The whole point of
Right.
it would be to help accelerate our education system. I
Mhm.
think there's kind of like a hierarchy of how I look at our society, and I think the foundation of a good society is education. The foundation of a good education is the family unit, and the foundation of a family unit is religion. And so with that, it's like if you can build those up in a certain way, which I know a lot of people would disagree with this, but I do believe that highly intelligent individuals understand that there is a God, and that they're not so egocentric to think that, hey, evolution, because I always get into arguments with evolution and adaptation with people, and I've never believed in evolution, even when my faith wasn't as strong as it was now, just because it doesn't make sense to me. But
Right.
my whole thing with it is, it's like, okay, if there evolution is such a rare occurrence, if it is an occurrence, that if it did happen that way, nowhere else in the universe would have life, most likely. Like the percentage chance of that is so minuscule, and most people don't understand that. And so it's like, and with even evolution, you still need to believe in a miracle. You have to believe in the Big Bang. So it's like, how far removed do you want to get from your science to realize that someone gave you that
Ah,
science? And so I kind of went off on a tangent and almost forgot really why I was talking. Oh, that's why, because so I do believe that educating our society will accelerate it, but I think kids should be able to come out of what would be high school now with either a associate, bachelor's, or a trade certificate, so they can make money right away. And then if they so decide to change their path, they at least have a foundation to do that with, instead of struggling to, take care of their kids and losing time with their kids to go to night school. Like, it's just, I feel like there's too much loss too as well with summers off. And I know people would probably hate me for saying that, like young kids, but parents will love me because everyone is always hectic in the summer with kids. But I think that 3 months you get a lag of learning first off, and then you have to go back and relearn everything that they lagged on. So it's like you get a double hit of learning regression from our 3 month summers. And so I think that right there, if you eliminated 3 month summers, I think that would put a boost to our education system that you would see almost instantly. But accelerating the program, I think, would be almost seamless as well, because every time we've boosted the programs over the last 30 years, we've seen our numbers were completely off on how many kids would fall out. And they were acceptable numbers to us, but we never even came near them. And so with that, that tells us that as a population, we are able to excel, but we're just choosing not to for some reason. And I mean, to me, it's a control thing. It's easier to lead a population of idiots than it is a population of educated. But the reason I want to surround it with the church is because I wholeheartedly believe in God, and I do believe that with him there's nothing that I can't accomplish. And so it's like, why not put the strongest person I have in my corner, right with what I want to do. So that's kind of the way that all folded out. And so she had given me her information.
okay.
Ugh. So she had given me her information, and I just reached out to her and asked her if she wanted to do it, and she said yeah. And so went from there. It was good to talk to someone else though with faith, because it made me realize how much I had to do on myself, and then as well. Oh man, that really messed me
Are
up.
you okay?
Yeah, it's like a bug in my throat almost. And so I enjoy speaking to others of faith, and I try to do as much as I can with my church too as well. But obviously, everyone is busy, and so with my schedule being a little different than it was, it allowed me to get back into church. But speaking to other people of faith too is really important to me, just because it allows me to see fallacies in the way I may be thinking or maybe interpreting things. And it's just also why I like talking to people. It's the same reason. It allows you to expand yourself. So But yeah, that was kind of a little long gist about how me and Renee met, but yeah. And so uh are there any things that you wanted to specifically touch on so that we don't get too far off track? Because as you can see, I kind of have like a tangent mind where I
I think uh, probably like the timeline of kind of everything that's happened in the last 4 years, and just kind of God's hand in it. But also, I've learned about society, people,
okay.
things that didn't happen, things that need to change. Um, a lot of the things I talk about deals with so many different things. I mean, just within the last 4 years, I mean, my story involves um, ideation, it involves miscarriage, it involves cancer, it involves loss of community, it involves faith and pro-life communities, and a were not helpful how they engaged in um, the abuse that my ex-fiance did towards me, and just how we need to do better. Like if we're saying that we're believers, we shouldn't be slandering and defaming people. If if there are attorneys that are there to protect victims, then they shouldn't be crossing sexual lines with victims. And I have a story of an attorney that I had sought help from who is very inappropriate, and that caused further harm. One of the things that I had to seek help from when I was dealing with suicide ideation, staff, and sexual harassment against me and others. There was things that other people that were there that were seeking help, they were allowed to do whatever, and just different things like that where it could have been better. Things should have been dealt and done differently and better, and just how we all so many people are hurting. Everybody's dealing with something, and we can either help or we'll end up going on the kind of the opposite end of the spectrum and harm. And this is what harm looks like, and just kind of the ripple effect of harm. I mean, there were so many churches involved in different states with my ex-fiance.
Yeah.
Benny Hinn's ghostwriter. One of the churches giving over a $20,000 donation to the Spring of Tampa Bay that helps victims and survivors of domestic violence. And so they wouldn't help me because my ex and his attorney all go to that church. And as soon as I said the names of the other people involved, they wouldn't help me at all. And just how that needs to change. And I think because of these people and thinking that they have so much power, they're getting away with it, and it needs to be exposed. And so there's just a lot of that from January 2020 until just as of recent in July of things that have happened that I think we just really need to take a hard look and just be like, this can't continue.
I mean, just from what you've said, I'm so, and I know it's out there, and I guess I like to sit here and kind of try to be a little bit more optimistic, but I've always known it was out there, but I just didn't think it would be so prolific. And that is just, I that is one thing that, like, when I first went back to church, it was one thing that kept ringing with me, is like when I would hear my pastor talk about whitewashed Christians, or people who masquerade as Christians, or who masquerade behind a religion, even who use to strengthen their position or their power. And it was something that I decided very early on when my faith became strong, was like, I will never try to seek any type of power through religion. There's nothing I could ever want from it more than just God's blessings and just learning a better way to live. And people who do that, they're truly, truly infantile people, in my eyes, at least. And it's because to me it's like that's the cheapest route to go. Christians will accept everybody, but one person who I truly enjoy who speaks about Christianity that I you know I never like to judge how prolific someone is in their faith, but I do think Christianity has a lot stronger meaning than I think a lot of people understand. Even at least that's the way I've started to interpret it. Haven't discussed this with anybody much, but so you'll be the first one. But he talks about how as a Christian we take on that burden of carrying the cross. That we know that even after carrying that cross up the hill, there still is going to be agony after it, and that might be what happens. And so people who use the church to masquerade behind, I don't believe they even understand that's what that means. And I always I used to, when I was a kid, I would think this, why did God do this to me? Why did God do this to me? And now I understand that even though I walk with God and I hold him dear in my heart and I know he holds me the same way, it doesn't mean things will always be great, but it does mean that you will persevere with him. And so
Yeah.
just you have, and it's 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 disturbing to me. And you are 100% right. These people need to be stopped. They need to be there needs to be something done about it, because you shouldn't be able to hide behind the power of something as strong as the Christian faith and use it to better try and take advantage of people or to shut out people who need you, especially since that's
Yeah.
exactly what Christianity is. The people who need
Right.
you are the people who get the most from it. And
Right.
so
Yep.
it's disturbing. It really is. And I we'll do the intro at like the end, because I don't even, I think you shook me so far off my block with that I want to get into it and learn more about it, because obviously knowing the story, hearing knowing it will entrench me more into it. And I don't know, I want to hear about how you became this powerful person you are and strong woman, the strong woman you are. So
Yeah.
I'll say your name just so we have that. You're Witlee Evans. I'll let
Ethan.
sorry, Witlee Ethan. I'm
Fine.
sorry. You I like I said, I'll do your intro a little bit later, but if you want to go ahead and start off with your timeline, and we can kind of get into that, and then I'll just cut it to match up a little better.
Yeah. So I've gone through a lot throughout my life, starting at a very young age. And I think all those things kind of prepared me. I had a rude awakening at a very young age that this world was not safe. I grew up fast. And I think at some point, so I know that scripture says, like, in this world you will have trouble. I kind of thought there would be a reprieve. And I kind of thought that at some point things would be better. Like, I had gone through so much when I was younger, abuse, everything, sexual abuse, that I just couldn't, it was just so hard that I tried to end my life. And it wasn't successful. I got there with an hour to spare before I died. I actually felt myself dying, and I'm not going to say exactly what I did because I don't want to give people ideas of what to do. But I thought, okay, second chance at life. It's like smooth sailing now. Everything that had happened prior to that, it's going to be so much better. And I hate to say this, but it got significantly worse. I will say that through that, kind of the aftermath of that, because around that time then I suffered a spine injury, had to have all this tests to see if I had brain damage, which thank God I didn't. And so there's just so much going on that it actually got me into a close relationship with Christ. So I grew up in a Christian home, asked God into my heart when I was 3. This was very different. And I remember falling to my knees in my living room floor and basically saying, if you exist, God, I need you to show up right now. Like, I know you exist, but I need to, like, know that, like, I'm going to be okay moving forward. And this was after I had survived the suicide attempt and everything, and which was in my teens. So I'm, like, in my teens at this point. And I said, I need you to take away the pain. The pain was so intense, I just wasn't sure how I was going to get through it. In that moment, it felt like a cloak had been lifted from me, and I felt no pain. Like, it was gone. I was like, okay. And I remember there was one tear falling from my face, and I'm like, there's no pain. Like, okay, I can do this. And that significant moment was what helped to give me the strength for whatever else I was going to be facing, which again was going to be so much worse than what I had already gone through, which I didn't even think that was possible. I think, back to those moments when I knew I was dying from my suicide attempt, I could feel the life draining from me. And I got scared. And it was just a wake-up call. And I think because of all the abuse, especially the sexual abuse, I had been being abused by a friend's father at that time. And so it was really hard to, moments when I had my kind of come to Jesus moments, it really prepared me. And so let's fast forward to 4 years ago. And I knew I always wanted to get married, and I always wanted to have kids. And so, of course, the whole big thing was dating sites. And so I met a guy on a dating site on Hinge, and we met up at the public place. It went really well. Went to see the movies. And then basically it was, I live a mile away, right across from this church. Why don't we come over and watch the first movie? Because we were watching the second movie at the movie theater. I made it very clear. I'm like, if we go there, this is what's not happening. We will not be engaging in any type of sex. Like, are you okay with that? Like, I need to know you're good. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, okay. We went to his place, and we never watched the movie. I tried to leave 3 separate times. He stopped me. And at that point, when he prevented me from leaving the 3rd time, was walking towards me with me walking backwards, I knew I was going to be raped. I was praying to God at that point that I would just live, as he was a former professional bodybuilder, and I knew I was in survival mode. And over the next 10 and a half hours, when he held me hostage, which is considered false imprisonment, he raped me a total of 3 times. And after each time he raped me, he forced me into the shower to wash away any evidence of his crimes. He knew what he was doing. And after the first time, I had to disassociate just to survive. Praying that at some point it would let me go. I knew I couldn't fight him, though at times I did try. And felt God's presence the whole time. And I was protected in a way. I prayed that I would survive it. I would live. I wouldn't be thrown on the side of the road or killed or whatever. And immediately after being released, I went to urgent care. And I know as a victim advocate, not a mad he said, she said. And so not thinking anybody would really believe me. And I remember this kind male doctor looked at me and said, I want you to know, crossing his threshold wasn't consent. He knew what he was doing, and this isn't your fault. And I just started sobbing. For the first time I thought, oh my gosh, he believes me. I was worried he wouldn't. And he said, but we can't help you. You have to go get a sexual assault kit. All the evidence collected, you have to go to the emergency room. And I was there for over 4 hours. And it's very invasive. It's very violated. There's a lot of evidence they have to take, and pictures, and documentation. There was over 60 pages of documentation showing proof that I was sexually assaulted, with bruises, cuts, and abrasions from my face down to my feet that were documented throughout my body. And they gave me all of the emergency antivirals. One, I actually had to pull over on the side of the road leaving the hospital because I was so nauseous. They did say, let me give you the morning after pill. I am pro-life, and also know how pro-life people sometimes treat those that end up pregnant from being raped. You know how society does. I know how society treats single moms. And I didn't want to go through that. So initially I was going to take it. And at the last minute I said I can't. And they said, well, you need to sign off that you're not taking it. And so I signed off. I wasn't taking the morning after pill. And I had to immediately go to the pharmacy because for your AIDS antivirals, you have to take morning and night. They give you the first dose, but you have to pay out of pocket. And they accidentally sent me the bill for the hospital for just this, which state law, your victim advocacy, like they pay for it. It was an over $4,000 bill. When I went to the pharmacy, I was told, well, each of these AIDS antivirals, morning and night, is over $3,000, and that's not covered by insurance. And I said, I don't have over $7,000. And they said, this is one of the hardest things. We have so many women like you come here, and we have to turn them away, and they don't get the help that they need because they can't afford to pay for it. And I remember I started praying, I think it was Mark 11:24, which is ask and it will be given, seek and knock and all that stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, God, I need a miracle. Like, I need this medicine. And I was there for 2.5 hours. Now, like, take in mind, I've been through hell over 10.5 hours. I was in the hospital for over 4.5 hours. I'm now here for over 2.5 hours. I've not gone home. I haven't done anything. I haven't had time to breathe with all this happening. And the pharmacist says, I think I found a coupon. Let's see if it works. And she said, oh my gosh. She said, this one's taken care of. It's a zero amount. I'm like, are you serious? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, whatever you're doing, keep doing. I'm like, I'm going to keep praying. I kept calling. I got another coupon. And we're like, okay, let's see if this works. And I said, would it work? She said, this would be the first. We've never had a coupon for anyone. $0. I was able to get both prescriptions without having to pay any money. People were cheering in the pharmacy because this was such a huge thing. A big deal. This has never happened before. And I just, of course was like, this was of course God and prayer and everything. And I went on my merry way. 30 days which is how long I had to take the medicine. I was nauseous, ugly, ate, sick as a dog. I think I lived off of ginger ale and crackers because literally these drugs are so powerful. It's killing whatever you might have been exposed to. So it is making you sick. In the midst, I'm also in pain. I'm also dealing with the trauma and the aftermath. And unbeknownst to me, pregnant. And ended up having a traumatic miscarriage on my bathroom floor myself. And again, just kind of felt like I'm going to act like none of this happens. I cannot even wrap my brain around the fact that what happened, and now this just happened, and it didn't happen, it didn't happen, it didn't happen. And I was going to basically go take it to my grave and go through life. It didn't happen. I mean, I'm a victim advocate. Can't happen to me. And I kind of started using my social media platform as kind of an outlet of sharing hard things that I was going through. And it got sharing their stories. Still not really sharing anything. Now, the police have all of the evidence. It was done anonymously, but I know well that if you end up on a stand, they're going to rip you apart and you're going to be made that guy. And I knew the mental state I was in was not good. And at some point with all this happening, I had to seek medical help because I was dealing with suicide ideation. And my will to live was just not there. When I seek help from a mental health facility, I hadn't been in a mental health facility like this before. Didn't know what to expect, was afraid, but my counselor made it very clear I needed to be somewhere. As my counselor was fearful for my safety, my life, knowing just the state I was in. I was sexually harassed by staff. Other people that were there that were dealing with suicide ideation, dealing with depression, anxiety. There was people there with a lot more stuff. I came in, I'm dealing with the aftermath of being. You have people that are dealing with schizophrenia and bipolar and all these different things. And HIPAA wasn't followed. We had random people walking through this lockdown center. It wasn't because we needed to be on lockdown, but just to protect the people didn't go wandering. Because again, this isn't just people that have gone through a traumatic event. This is people that are having really severe, they aren't safe to be out wandering. And the way it was set up wasn't safe. They had people wandering the halls. They had people where they were watching horror movies late at night and murdering people. And these are people that are watching them that are dealing with bipolar and schizophrenia and all these other types of mental illnesses. And I would go up to staff and be like, I don't think that this is good for people to be watching. I don't think it's good for them to be engaging and playing with the Ouija board right now. I don't think this is good for people's mental health. The people there were getting very aggressive. We go up to staff again. I have concerns about my safety, about other people's safety. While I was there, someone committed suicide.
Okay. No, I'm sorry. Wow. I'm sorry.
And just feeling like you're in a place that's supposed to be safe, supposed to be helping you get the help you need, and then someone takes their own life down the hall from you.
And that's what
really
you're
hard.
There to try and, like, that's what you're struggling with at that moment, and to have that put right in front of you too. It's like that's almost like the exact opposite. I'm sorry.
And seeing the ambulance come, having to be closed off away from that wing so that we're not seeing everything that's happening. I mean, I think this is really important. There's places in place to help, and sometimes they don't help and they cause more harm. And this is a really good example. Staff should not be sexually harassing the people there. I mean, I remember, they have a regimen of how things go. Well, with the AIDS antivirals, in order for it to work, you have to take it the same time every day, every night. You miss. You're taking it at 9 a.m. and you take it at 10 a.m., it's not going to work. And I remember getting there and they said, all right, so breakfast is at this time and this is the time we have your medicine. This is the time we're going to give it to you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, you can't. It has to be taken the same time every day. And they said, it's not like you're going to be having sex with anyone. That's not what the medicine's for. Medicine is to protect me from the fact that I was just raped. It needs to be taken the same time every time. Like, just insensitive things like that made it not a safe place to be. No matter how many times I brought issues up, concerns up of safety issues, of other people who needing to be on heavy medicine to regulate their mental issues. and getting in the faces of other people, endangering the safety, and getting the response from staff saying, well, they cooled off. And it's like, no, that shouldn't even have happened. And then like allowing them to wander the halls late at night, wherever they wanted to go. It was not safe. And you're dealing with that on top of everything else. And really what all I should have been focusing on was, I need to get help because this horrific thing happened. And this is what I think is really important. It's not like being in a car accident and being like, I'm not going to go past that scene anymore. I'm going to avoid that road because that's triggering. Your body, when you are raped, is the crime scene. You can't escape it. The people being like, just let it go. And it's like, let what go? I see it when I'm awake. I see it when I go to sleep. I'm awoken from it at night. How do I let that go? The body keeps score, and the body remembers even when you don't want to remember. Yeah. That's why I think is so important for people to understand is that's why someone can have a trigger years later. They could be totally fine. And then they walk into a room, they smell a smell, and it's like, oh my gosh. And they're taken right back to that. And people might be like, well, wait a second, that happened like, what, 15 years ago? Aren't you over that? And it's like, body remembered. All your senses, they're all impacted. When we have things in place that are supposed to be protecting people, harm can't exist in that same place for someone to feel safe and be protected. Either one or the other. It can't be both. In this situation, it caused more harm. And I can tell you that when I left, there was feeling that I had to work through because I was working through healing. I spent every day that I was there the Bible. I probably read through 40 books of the Bible while I was there, if not more. There was a lot of harm that I then had to work on with my counselor because of what happened while I was there. Feeling unsafe, my safety being jeopardized. I will tell you this. A staff member who sexually harassed me works there.
He still works there?
Still works there.
I have so much to say, but
still works there, and he just was a contributing author on a book that came out this year at Bethany House Publishing. Works there. And every email I had sent to them, I would get dismissed when I'd say, what are you going to do? This is wrong. This isn't okay. What are you going to do? And I would get, we take care of it.
Was he just a general staff member or was he a counselor?
He wasn't a counselor. He was on the nursing staff. He oversaw, like if we anything we did, he oversaw. If, you had to see someone about an issue, he oversaw it. If you were going in, because the nursing staff would take turns of, are they taking your blood? Are they doing this? Because we would have physicals while we were there. He oversaw that. If we were having to go and, okay, everybody get in line, time to get your medicine. I was having to get all my antivirals for AIDS. He oversaw that. We had an outing where they allowed us, because, part of the therapy there was go to a farm and work with animals. And he was there because on our outings.
That's almost perfect. It's weird that you said that because I was thinking you let the fox in the hen house. Like that's exactly.
He's still there.
Yeah, the fox. Like you're just like. It's kind of a brutal analogy, but and I don't mean it to sound like that. It's just you brought up farm animals, and so I felt like I had to say it because that's, and you see this problem occurring more and more where we're putting people at risk because we're allowing a fox into the hen house who's acting like a hen. This person's acting like they want to help you and being in this facility when really they're just manipulating that situation. And it's like I almost feel like we're seeing so many laws and so many things passed nowadays to protect these foxes who are just going into hen houses, and then we use this stupid logic to protect them when we know that, hey, let's be truly thoughtful about the situation. There's places of sensitivity always in the world. Those places need a higher stature of individual to ensure they do not take advantage of people. And it's like there needs to be something put in place, regulatory, that can control that, because you were going through, in I can say, would have been the hardest thing in my life ever. I don't want to ever speak for anybody, so, but that you were going through something so unbelievably traumatic that you were trying to get help of it, and yet you were exposed to exactly what you were trying to avoid. You then got even more of something that should have never happened to anybody, and it's like it disgusts me. It really does, and it's like to hear that this guy is authoring a book and by a mainstream publishing company, like that's uh, uh well, and I'm sorry, I said guy. I guess I shouldn't presume, but
No, it's a guy. He is a guy.
okay.
And I think also you're in such a vulnerable position
Yeah,
because you are in a mental health facility
yeah,
and they are staff. And so to speak up, retaliation, I mean, he could easily say, well, she's here for mental health, so she's
yeah,
not really telling the truth. But I still spoke up, and I spoke up while I was there, not after, while I was there, sending emails to compliance, sending emails to management that were dismissed and ignored,
yeah.
and then having to face staff that were allowing this to happen. And so no wonder that when I came to him, because other girls came to me and said, oh my gosh, this other person there that was there for mental health is preying on me. It's talking to me about sexual things. It's making me feel uncomfortable. And I would go to staff and say, we have an issue. Like, this person needs to be removed. And it would be dismissed. And the thing is that I think for something like this, because people deal with mental health on so many different levels for so many different reasons, whether it's that you are diagnosed with something like a lot of the people there were, or you're dealing with something because of something you went through. Now you're dealing with depression, anxiety. These people should not be together.
No.
If you have people that are violent and aggressive and have posed a threat to society because of whatever reason, you need to be in a more secure place. You should not be able to roam free. And, honestly, there should have been a separate wing. Women, men. Because the men were
Wait,
causing the issue.
you were together with men? And you know what's crazy is I'm pretty sure every state does it. But all mental health facilities went through a huge defunding. A huge defunding. And I know they closed every in Illinois, they closed every mental health like major like public ran facility. And so by it becoming privatized, what they're doing is they're now putting a price tag on every person's head. It's like privatized prisons. You know what I mean? They're going to get as much as they can, for as little, to give as little as they can. And that's unfortunately because those bills are not cheap.
No.
And
and it wasn't like a hospital. Like, we had suites. We had we each had our own private bathroom. We had a nice bed. We had a desk. We had all this. We had a closet. But anybody could walk down a hall, go into someone's room. They weren't locked. They weren't allowed to be locked at night. And so the people that were roaming the halls late at night and not being watched, men could easily go into one of the girls' rooms that was unlocked. I mean, there should have been separate wings for men and women. It would have removed a lot of stuff, and there should have not been, say, male staff that were overseeing the women, especially when the moment I brought up of what was happening, that male staff member, and actually there was two, should have been removed.
yeah. One thing that really rang with me when you said it, was when you asked God to relieve you of all your pain, and it worked. And I had always wondered how, how could that work for people? How could that work for people? And then I tried it one day, and it's unexplainable how it just pulls away from you. And I started to cry when you said it, and I was like, I think this is the record right here for as quickest someone's made me cry with their. I'm crying again right now because of it. Anytime I've asked God when I was in a mood or anything like that, like God, because I like to sit in my emotions, because if I don't, I bottle them and then they come out at the wrong times. And so I've learned throughout the years, like, just let yourself feel it, man. Like, yeah, it sucks being sad, but just let yourself feel it. And so sometimes after I've went through it and like I'm like, man, why do I still feel like this? I'll just pray, and then whoop, he just pulls it away, like, oh, I'm sorry, left the sheet on you. Like it's so like it, and like I've said it before, I feel bad because my faith, like I've had all these crazy things happen in my life, and so like all and God has been right there to prevent them or to help with them. And so like my faith, to me, would be almost crazier if I wasn't faithful. And so I it makes me feel guilty that sometimes I have such a strong faith, because I see people struggling with certain things or struggling with something. And I always just think, you just gotta let God take care of it, because He will. It might not be in the way you want, it might take long, and it might be more treacherous ahead, or it might be great, you never know. But the story of Job is what I always think to, is even when we're doing everything completely right, it's sometimes just a test of your faith. And I always remind myself, if my faith is tested, will I answer the call? And I do wholeheartedly. And I saw this in my pastor's office, actually, and I didn't realize it. And so now I've started saying it even more. But a lot of people say, like, oh, would you die for your religion? Oh, I know, yeah, I would 100% die for my religion. Anyone who's a real Christian would say that, because they know they're going to a better place. But would you live for your religion? And that right there is a true testament to like how strong you are, because it's easy to die. It's that sounds crazy to say, but it is. It's easy to die. It's hard to live. It is. And choosing to is it's a hard thing. It is, because it's a conscious choice that people make every day. But when things are so bad in your life and it looks like it's never going to get better, because you feel like you're so far down, it is an easy thing to turn to, and it takes a lot of willpower to turn away from it. People will argue and say, oh no, you're a coward if you do it, you're a coward if you do it. Well, I'm sorry, I don't, I also lost my mother. My mother committed suicide on my 21st birthday, unfortunately. And well, she technically had did it the night of, and then the morning is when they took her off life support. So that morning was my birthday, but I still lost her on my birthday. And so um and I've come to terms with the fact that I'll never see her again. I used to argue that I would, like, oh, that the Catholic Church put that in there because of the band. There was a group of individuals who called themselves thuggies. That's where we got the word thug from. They would attack people along a trade route in hopes of dying and going to heaven sooner. And when they didn't, they would go and jump off a cliff. And so there's this whole thing where this was found, and they say that subsequently it became a cardinal sin to commit suicide. And so I hung my hat on that for a very long time. But then as I came around to my faith, and very strong, and it became very strong very quickly. And so like a lot of things were put to my head, and one of them was that you know suicide isn't, you're not just robbing yourself. God is all knowing, but the one thing that God can't control is free will. And so if you can't control it, there has to be some unknowing to it, I would think. There has, not unknowing, but like that's a factor in it. And so when we commit suicide, we steal that opportunity that God gets to see how he can, how what things he can put in front of someone to maybe help the next person quicker. Or I'm not saying he's learning, because God knows all, I know that, but we steal an opportunity for him to help. And so that's why it's so shameful to him, because he wants that peace that he gave to us to come back to him. And so when you steal that opportunity from him, it's like a slap in his face. And so it was weird, because they say you never see the faces of people who you won't see, or who aren't in heaven. So like if you have a dream with them, you'll have the whole dream, and like it'll be a memory or something, say, but you'll see that person, but you won't be able to see their face. And that's how it's always been with my mother. And then I had this. I was watching this sermon called Crazy Faith. If you look up YouTube Crazy Faith sermon or I forget what they call it, series, it's absolutely amazing. My old head dean put me onto it because I reached out to him to get some understanding of the school systems for my dream, and he put me onto it, and I was watching it, and I kind of like closed my eyes and was praying a little bit, and then I hate to say it, but it was almost like a vision. Like I saw my mom running on a beach, and I, she was in tow of somebody. Someone was pulling her along. She said, "I don't have long, sweetie. Just keep doing what you're doing and just keep moving." I saw her face, and like I reached out to her hand. She reached out to me, and she went, but she was like 16, and I don't have a picture of my mom when she was 16 anymore, and I can't even tell you what she looked like really, but I know I saw her face. But the just keep moving thing, and being able to it, I felt like that was almost like, hey, this is the last time you're gonna see her, but you're doing what she wanted. And so like there's these things that religion brings into people, and it in the end it helps. And so someone who has went through even what you've already just talked about, I know you have so much more, and that there's so much more to you than just what those two things are in your life. You are so much more of a person than those things. But for your faith to be unshooken, it is honestly inspirational. So thank you for that, and thank you for never giving up on God, because He definitely never gave up on you. Oh, sorry, I'm crying now.
I actually that people that are believers in their lives, I do think they go to heaven, and this is why. Have you ever wondered why some people who try to commit suicide, theirs fails and some don't?
Yeah.
And it's because, and this is what I've realized, is before we're even created and put in our mother's womb, our day of birth and our day of death is already determined. Like, we don't have the power to change that. And so when I think back to my suicide attempts, should have worked. It didn't. I think that wasn't the day I was supposed to die. Hard to share that with families that have had people who have lost, because it's like, well, why did you get to live and you didn't? No different than someone at the last minute fighting to join the military.
Yeah.
Weren't even on that. Something happens. Or being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or, just different things or different choices that we make that can maybe alter how we die, when we die. And so, and I think also an important thing about suicide that I want to make very clear, because it's such a touchy topic.
Yeah.
People think suicide and they're like, oh my gosh, these people are unstable. Not necessarily true. Anyone can be pushed to the point of like no return, where you feel you have no other options. I will say, when I attempted suicide in my teens, I was, at that time, the belief was that we're being impressed upon young girls. Your worth is in your virginity. You're not a virgin, you don't have worth. And when my friend's 40-something-year-old dad stole my innocence, I thought, I've always dreamed of being a mom and getting married. That now went away. No one's going to want me. No one's going to want to touch me. No one's going to want to love me. I have no worth. And as a teen girl, that is like, what's the purpose of life? I felt so burdened by that. Did I really want to die? No, but I wanted the pain to end. And at this point, it seemed like I didn't have a future. What would be the point? Clearly, I did have a future. I'm still here. And I will say that then when I was dealing with suicide ideation from being raped, and again, act of violence is so damaging. Like it impacts every aspect of your life. It wasn't that I didn't want to live, because I didn't want to die. Let me rephrase that. I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to live. And perfect example, I didn't try to do anything to end my life. I just prayed that God would take me away. Mm-hmm. The pain was so unbearable. I didn't know how I was going to be able to survive everything, the miscarriage, all of that. And again, feeling like it's impacting my worth. I have no worth and I'll be defined by this. Yeah. What future do I have if I'm defined by this? And the thing is I'm not defined by that. And those people that have defined me, which there's been many people that have defined me by this, things I've gone through, that is a reflection of the deficits in their character, not mine. Yeah. But I was so wanting to not live. I knew I needed to get help. And that's the thing. We oftentimes will tell people to get help, get help, get help. Then they get help. We shame them for it. Guess what? They're only thinking, why did I get help? Yeah. They're going to be like this, and this is how they're going to treat me. What was the point of getting help? We need to let there be a place where there's no shame and no blame. And I will say, like, mental health is a hard issue to talk about, to discuss. You know, I deal with PTSD because of this. I deal with depression and anxiety at times. I've gotten to a place where I'm able to work through it and manage it. I've also gotten to a place where I know if I need to break. It's a self-care and remove myself from something that might not be helping me. An environment, people, relationships, whatever. And I'll do that. I'll step away. But those that this might impact, where I'm talking about schizophrenia and bipolar, they're not defined by that. But I think it's really important for places that are dealing with mental health, because mental health is such a fragile thing to deal with. It's like a ticking bomb. You don't take a ticking bomb and put it in an explosive environment where there's more harm. You need to be very careful with everything you do and putting it in a safe haven for there to be healing and restoration. If not, you're going to add to it, and it's going to escalate mental health struggles and challenges, and they might develop more things. If someone was dealing with anxiety, now they might be dealing with depression. Now it might be full-scale PTSD. Like, we need to be helping to get to the root of it and helping it before it progresses to more struggles. This mental health facility didn't do that. Cause more harm.
And so go ahead, sorry.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
So having steps in place where you have people, for everybody's safety, people that are aggressive and violent and are there because their health struggles are completely out of control, need to be separate from other people who aren't posing a threat.
Yeah.
And like myself are dealing with mental health because of something that happened to me, not because of a diagnosis. It's something that was done to me, and now I'm dealing with the repercussions of somebody else's happy decisions, horrible decisions. I should never have, I shouldn't have been on the receiving end of that.
No, and so what I was gonna say was, it's the reason, obviously the cut in funding is what caused, I think, a lot of that, because I think there's like there should be, to kind of bring it back to old terms, like an asylum, where someone with a destabilizing condition like schizophrenia or bipolar or, multiple personality syndrome, any of those extremely debilitating mental diseases that we completely don't have a wrap on, where people can break their medication and go into a spiral or whatever it may be, whatever causes that to trigger them. There needs to be separate facilities for people like that, and then people who go through life crises, because you know, as someone who's dealt with with depression, and it's, to me, there's almost an overuse of the word too, and like, yes, it is depression, but I think there's a difference between, being I'm not talking to your situation at all either. I'm just saying, like, I hear it on the news all the time. Oh, we have a increase in depression. Well, is it an increase in depression, or are people not knowing how to, are we not giving people the proper tools to deal with their sadness in their life of a crisis? Like, I don't like hearing someone say they're depressed because they just broke up from a relationship, because, granted, yeah, that could really shatter your life. It really can. I get that completely. But I think that just needs to get categorized back into sadness, because I think when you say that's depression, depression doesn't it'll always be there. And it's about how you deal with it when it comes up, because you could have everything and everything could be going great. You could be flush with money, you could have the love of your life, you could have the life you always wanted, and you will still feel sad. That's, I believe, what true depression falls under. And I do think you can be cured from it, yes, but I think, you know with major ailments, you can't be cured from them. And so those people, that's the separation line. If there is a way to be cured from it, those people should not be housed with people who, if they miss their medication, it causes them to go in a spiral, because it creates a whole different, a whole well it can create a whole different outcome. Even like in your situation, that could have made you go into a worse spiral. And it's like, wait, it's like going to the doctor and then prescribing you chemo for a flu. It's like, whoa, wait, what? This doesn't make any sense right now. I'm supposed to be safe in this place. I'm supposed to feel protected. I'm supposed to be getting help. You're supposed to be helping me get back to being a productive member of society. Yet you have me here in a place with people who are aggressive, people who are taking advantage of their situation. And then as well, you have me in a situation where you almost have caused my mental state to become in a situation where it could almost become the untreatable kind, even, you know what I mean, where I would be the one that would need to be separated too, because I do think you can fall into those things, because I do think the mind can be broken just like every other organ. um and it's the crappy part is you can break a mind in a second, with an instance. But we used to think the brain couldn't regenerate, and that was because it takes so long to regenerate that we weren't watching it long enough, or we weren't monitoring it long enough. And outside of nootropics, obviously new technology, or not new technology, but yeah, it is a technology because it's a medicine, but it's a new nootropics help increase that. Like, we obviously know nicotine helps your brain secrete acetylcholine. It's why you always have seen academics and scientists and people of extreme intelligence used to smoke cigarettes. You would always see it up until like the 70s. It was like second nature. But it's, so there's things that can help the brain, but yeah, with that being broken, it makes it really difficult to get it back. And so those facilities, they need to be separated to where, where we're helping people get better, and not just trying to help them when they're completely broken. That's the other thing.
Right.
I think our healthcare system has turned into the insurance system, where if you get in a car accident, we'll fix your car. If your car breaks down the side of the road, your insurance doesn't cover that. Nope, that's an engine problem. That's a different thing. It's like, wait. So once I'm broken down, I can go to the hospital. But how about you prevent me from breaking down? Like,
Right.
so
Yeah.
what is there? What do we have in society that does that? Nothing anymore. I mean, and the dissemination of the family unit in America and the acceptance of it is is a chip away further and further. And then yeah, I don't know, I just it's I really do feel like there's so many downfalls in society right now with everything going on. It's there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But alrighty, thank you folks for joining us for another episode of The Sound of Sosa. I had Witlee Ethan on with me today, and as you can tell, we had a very, very heartfelt conversation. I hope you join us for the next 4 to 5 parts so you may learn more, grow more with us, and see how God can bless everybody's life. Thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you again. Take care, folks.